Okay, welcome to the movie night extravaganza, murder night extravaganza wrap up with this great panel of the Undersecretary of Pussy, J. Underworld over here.
Super Mario Cuomo.
Knockoff comic book character, Neutron Man. How's it going?
As always, I remain.
And Renee Ruin, who is our horror expert, horror queen, writing reviews on the night shift. I don't know, the amount of content you put out on a whole bunch of different locations it's hard to even do an intro for that.
Yeah, too many.
Yeah.
Like all a bulleted list.
So
I now know how long it takes for me to be taken for granted and get my intro cut. Is just have Renee on.
The Neutron Man.
Hey, Neutron Man. You don't do anything else, right?
Oh.
Yeah, he's like Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius over here.
Exactly.
Well, look, I would have given you a perfect intro if we didn't just watch the Honest trailer where they literally do the Neutron Man thing, which is a bit that I wanted to do during our Halloween episode and completely forgot to do.
I did change my name for that too. We just never acknowledged it.
Conan Neutron of Protonic Reversal and Conan Neutron and the Secret Friends and the Neutron Man comic book franchise.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's really a 360 thing, you know.
Which one came first? You know, where you're like, oh, I'm a superhero and now I got to get into the musician game, or, you know, I'm a musician and now I got to get into the superhero game. Assumably that it's a superhero. I don't.
Yeah, well, one would imagine. I mean, if it's superhero, supervillain, I'll definitely take superhero for sure. Yeah, I don't know. Like, which came first, really? I mean,
that question was never answered in Buckaroo Banzai. We're not going to answer it here.
Exactly.
It's not even answered about the platypus. What came first, the
noble
platypus or the egg?
I don't even want to think about it.
Yeah, we're already into the Australian content. We're like, what, 5 minutes in?
Yes.
So anyway, I'm speaking of music. I'm gonna be sad to hear their Murder Night Extravaganza theme go to another year.
Yeah, you guys want to hear?
Although you know what though, we could bring it back for our sci-fi month we're planning.
No, I'm gonna make a whole new one for that.
Okay.
Considering like the reason that I had so much the reason that I was like so worried, because remember I was like messaging you guys being like, I don't know what I'm gonna do for this intro, is because as someone that like edits, that, you know, like does that as gigs, I'm like, I can't have like a weird or like shitty intro for this. I'm like, I need to come up with something cool enough that people remember it. So they're, because like imagine if I had like a clanky like really bad looking intro for Murder Night Extravaganza and people were just like, he wants jobs, but like that intro sucks. So I was like very worried about coming up with something that was cool and memorable. I don't want this show to become lazy. I want this show to keep progressing. So when we do another like theme month, which is December, we're gonna do sci-fi for that. Like, yeah. So I'm definitely gonna come up with like something cool for that, because I don't know. I don't want people to think I'm slacking over here.
Why? I said I was going to write you something, but I'm recording a record instead. So sorry about that, but that's fine. Turned out great.
All right, flex on us. Wow. You want to hear the Murder Night Extravaganza theme one more time, and you know?
Yeah, one more. Yeah,
one more time. With feeling.
I don't know.
We got rid of Conan.
Conan, yeah. I'm out.
I was kidding. I quit. That song sucks.
I'm gonna get a message later, or I'm like, hey Conan, can you do an extra stream? And he's gonna be like, you know, like they've been doing those like your boss texts you to quit on like in screenshots or whatever. Like,
yeah, I love those.
So Conan is gonna be like, dude, you literally don't pay anybody on the show. Like, yeah, I'm losing money. I quit. Oh, you want me to come in? This is my day off.
This is my day off. Yeah, but I need you to do a 17-hour podcast about how much Hans Zimmer sucks.
I know you'd be there for that though, right?
God
Yeah,
damn it!
actually, that's a poor
Got,
example, yeah.
you've hooked me with that one. I was gonna quit, but you hooked me.
Okay, you got me this time. Hey, so this is the first episode of this kind, right? Where it's like a pastiche of a theme month.
Yeah, and this is the first. This is obviously the first month that we've done something like this. But bringing this around, I guess, to the formatting side of it. I guess one by one, I want to hear what out of the list that we've listened, like that we've put out, or out of these episodes. And I know, Renee, you were only on the Dawn of the Dead one, but we sent the list over, and I know you've seen like every horror movie that's ever come out.
I've seen every single one. Yeah.
Yeah. So. somebody thinks of one, you're like, nope, saw it already.
Yeah.
I took it out of your mind and then reviewed it, and here's my review. But yeah, so out of that list, like, what's everybody's favorite? And maybe like something that they've I feel like a camp counselor, but something that they've learned during this month of stream. No, all right. So starting with Andy, favorite movie out of this list. I mean, if you want me to read off the list again, I can.
No, because it's easy. It's super
I think the
easy.
audience. I think it would be worth reading for the audience.
Okay, yeah, for the audience,
people to check out these episodes that maybe they haven't all watched or listened to.
So Psycho,
yep.
Halloween, Dawn of the Dead, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Blair Witch Project, Nightmare on Elm Street, Cabin in the Woods, and People Under the Stairs.
And the Keeper Sutherland Christmas Tree video.
Exactly. The forgotten epic of all of those.
Which of the list, I have to say, quite fond of Wes Craven. So it is really hard to choose between like my two babies. People Under the Stairs doesn't have like that one standout character villain like Wes Craven's Nightmare on Elm Street or Shocker.
I mean, the house, I guess, right? You can say the house.
Yeah, but like give me a memorable line from The House. See, you can't do it.
I was doing it.
It was stunned silence. Come on, everyone remembers that line.
But anyway,
I think you're right about that. I'm sorry.
It's just for pure enjoyment. The only film I ever dressed up as a character to go see was Nightmare on Elm Street 5. So it's got a very special place in my heart.
The kids of Elm Street don't know it yet, but something is coming to get them.
There's something out there, isn't there?
We just see cuts happen.
What did that, Lieutenant?
I don't know.
Tina! What's the coroner got to say? He's in the jar and puking since he saw it.
They're gonna kill me for sure.
Did you do it?
There was somebody else there.
He was locked in a room with a girl who went in alive and came out in a rubber bag.
No one knows where it came from or who it will visit next.
Nancy? There's something wrong with you. You're imagining things.
Nightmare on Elm Street.
Do you believe in the boogeyman?
No.
Whatever you do, don't fall asleep.
No! No!
She's the only one who can stop it. If she fails,
I'm your boyfriend now, Nancy.
no one will survive.
Help me, please! Where are you?
From Wes Craven, director of The Hills Have Eyes and Last House on the Left, a new masterpiece in fantasy terror, Nightmare on Elm Street.
My favorite thing about that is that you have this breakout character, Freddy Krueger, who does absolutely
breakout star, Freddy Krueger.
Freddy Krueger, just the best,
Not a looker.
But
Also, don't forget to mention he's Robert Englund, sci-fi hero, one of my favorite shows as well. He was the alien, Willie in V.
Yes.
That's right.
I don't think people in either Australia or America really want to praise England that much, but
England? I don't know how you say his last name.
No, so it's not spelled like England.
No, it's spelled England.
It's pronounced.
Yeah. Australia. I just say stuff weird, so apologies to Robert.
Love that Freddy Krueger. You know,
we love him, folks. Freddy Krueger.
And don't we love that Freddy Krueger? What a nightmare!
He's not quite the Freddy Krueger of the sequels, where he's this over the top, scene stealing crazy person. But you could see the seeds of that are all in there in that first movie. Like somehow, you know, as they're establishing the lore, they seem to have everything right there in the first movie, which is fantastic. And like I said, just, you know, much love for Robert Englund, Freddy Krueger, you know, and his other acting work like Phantom of the Opera, and you know, he hasn't done anything else really outside of horror movies. Like it's a shame, because he's a damn good actor. He shouldn't be like relegated to just genre films.
So he has a series that's like apparently a lot like the Twilight Zone. That he's a series that's a lot like the Twilight Zone, I guess, that he produced, but like it's real stories, like stories that they researched from history. And so he's actually done a pretty, I mean, I wish I knew about this, because he's done a pretty prolific podcast tour during the pandemic, because he was promoting this new show on well, I gotta hopefully the show comes back on and then he starts doing podcasts again. But like,
but have him come on and like we'll talk about like Spartacus or something, you know, just something completely unrelated. Just
yeah, no, he'd be.
What do you think about this?
Yeah.
Are you guys ready for me to pull the trigger on this?
Wow,
Yeah.
oh, Matthew,
I love it.
Is this the time
I think
to
that's
announce
the
it,
same.
Conan, is this the time to announce it? I think this is the time to announce it.
There will not be a better time, I don't think.
Yeah. All right. So so this Wednesday obviously is the first Wednesday of the month, which means that we're off as a show on Tuesday, and we're going to be doing This Is Revolution. Conan and Matthew Film Guy, seen here in this exciting publicity photo.
I'm pictured on the right. Yeah.
Matthew Film Guy pictured in this publicity photo will be doing Mikey and Nikki as our third This Is Revolution movie episode.
By the great Elaine May. Great movie. If you haven't seen it, you need to see it. Study up before that episode, because it's going to be a masterclass, baby.
A 1 hour masterclass.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's going to make the Cliff's Notes version of a masterclass, but we're going to do our best.
I think that our last one was really good, though. The Player, I think, was like an all-time great movie stream. Cuba, like, I don't know, like Cuba even hit me up afterwards and was like, hey, like that was a good, like, you know, we had fun talking about that, because we talked about it with Cuba and Summer, and you know, I think that we had a great conversation.
No, that was a good episode.
Well, you can keep things on track. I mean, obviously, don't use this as an example, but you can keep things on track, and it works really well. So, Andrew, what was your second sentence?
You know, Freddy Krueger was a fully fleshed out character, like on arrival. The world was pretty much built like on arrival. It just like from jump. If it wasn't for that third movie, this would be the best of the series. Really. They actually did top this with the third movie, with Dream Warriors, which unfortunately the sequel's completely like ruined, because they had to make it's like they had to bring back Freddy Krueger, and like, oh yeah, those dream powers, whatever, they don't mean anything now, which is a shame, because it was such a cool idea. Yeah, because I just said it was like the best, you know, like one of the best of the series, and the fact that because it's one of the best of the series, that you happen to have you know, and that the word was so thought about. I don't know. It just seemed like the most fleshed out of all the films that we watched. I mean, maybe Psycho might be a second one, because it's Hitchcock, and he really does think about all these things, but like he doesn't explore it at all in the script. Like it just, you know what I'm saying? Like there's a difference between like the actors and production making it seem like a fleshed out world versus Nightmare on Elm Street, where you actually have a really rich multi-generational story that's being told.
I would highly disagree with what you just said about Psycho. It wasn't the actors making it feel like it was a fully fleshed out universe in Psycho. It was a fully fleshed out universe in Psycho.
No, it absolutely. There was a lot there, but not as much. We're not talking like a multi-generational,
like a multiverse.
Like you don't have like the parents go. You had like basically it's the story of one guy, and you have his backstory is very well fleshed out. But like,
I mean, listen, I don't disagree with your choice of A Nightmare on Elm Street, so I'm not shitting on that part of it. I think I think that honestly, premise wise was the most terrifying, and we talked about that last night. Like, I think that there's the three. We kind of looked into three different slasher rules almost, right? Like there's the there's the have sex and you die rule, which is not something that John Carpenter. I mean, we've gone through this, and I've gone through this on multiple streams, but it's not something that John Carpenter planned out or wanted to portray by this. Not something that Deborah Hill wanted to portray with these movies, but like that's kind of been the I guess general rule that's come out of Halloween. And then of course there's the second one, which is the like you fall asleep you die rule, which I want to talk about these three for sure, like these three different rules. Because
I think the virginity rule probably came more from the camp slasher films.
Well, I think
more than Halloween. I think
so. What we kind of talked about, or what we kind of talked over during the Halloween stream, and since then, is that it was an accidental thing. I think that people like Sean Cunningham, who made Friday the 13th, and like a lot of other directors kind of took, and writers kind of, it was a misunderstanding about what John Carpenter was trying to say. John Carpenter was trying to, at least, taking him at face value, and his girlfriend Deborah Hill at face value, who co-wrote it with him. Very progressive. Anyway, no, it was, so they were trying to make it as realistic as possible. And they were thinking,
I can't wait to have nothing to talk about when we talk about my pick, by the way, but go ahead. Yeah.
No, I wanted to, at one point I wanted to touch on these three rules. So the first rule, I think, because this touches on every movie we've done, slashes on every movie we've done, I guess, as I say, only me ever. No, so there's the first rule, which is, the you have sex, you die, which came out of a misunderstanding about what John Carpenter was trying to portray by his movie. There's a second rule, which I think is much more terrifying, which is like you fall asleep, you die, which is the one that only really Wes Craven came up with as an idea. And he came up with it as an idea based on the fact that one day he woke up from like a nightmare or something, and there was a guy standing outside. Like, we watched that clip of him talking about this. There was a guy standing outside.
I read a newspaper article in the LA Times about a recent immigrant to the United States, a young man who had complained to his parents about severe nightmares. I think they were from Cambodia. And he was assured that nightmares were, not that unusual. He shouldn't be so afraid. And he started staying up and refusing to sleep. And the family became very concerned, and they sought the help of a doctor. The doctor prescribed sleeping pills. The young man apparently took them, and in the end, it turned out he did not. He was taking them and putting them aside. He had a coffee pot in his room after a while to stay awake, and nobody knew quite what to do. At one point, he was downstairs watching television in the middle of the night, and he fell asleep, and his family noticed finally that he was asleep, and they brought him up to his bed. The whole family went to bed themselves, thinking, thank God, finally he's sleeping. Heard screams an hour later, ran into his room. He was thrashing in his bed. By the time they got to him, he was dead. Yeah. And over the next 9 months, I found 2 more articles like that. So I wrote it and thought it was the best thing since sliced bread, and then spent 3 years trying to get somebody to fund it.
When I was, I think, about 7 years old, I was just about to fall asleep, and I heard this shuffling down the sidewalk and mumbling. And I went to the window. I was in a second-story apartment with, living with my family in Cleveland, and there was this man that looked pretty much like Freddy ended up looking. And I assume now he was probably a drunk, but at that time he was just this dark man. And he stopped and he happened to look directly up into the window and right into my eyes. Now, I don't know how he knew to stop, how he knew a kid was watching, but somehow he did. And it just stopped my breath in my throat. And I backed away from the window with him just staring at me until he couldn't see me and stood back there in the shadows and counted, And I don't know what I counted to 100 or 200 or whatever, but I didn't hear him. And I thought he must have gone by now, but I would have heard him, but he couldn't just be standing there. And I went back and he was there and he just went, like this with this big leer. And then he sort of capped himself by starting to walk down the sidewalk, still looking over his shoulder at me, and then turned the corner and walked towards the entrance of our building, which was out of my sight. But so I remember running through the house, dark house, and going to the front door and putting my ear to it and hearing the door downstairs open, the door to the lobby of the building. Whereupon I woke up everybody in the house, everybody in the apartment. And my brother went down with a baseball bat. And by the time I had awakened everybody in the stir, this guy had disappeared. But that memory became the essence of Freddy, because that guy, whoever the hell he was, enjoyed scaring the shit out of a kid. And that extrapolating that and taking that to the nth degree, I think you have the kind of mentality of older men that can send young men off to war, or a generation that always hates the music of a young generation because it's threatening to them, because they are the ones inheriting new life, whereas the older people are the ones inheriting old age.
So that's the second rule, and I think that's the most terrifying rule, because you can tell yourself watching these movies well, if I was going to be in this universe, I just wouldn't have sex. You know what I mean? I'm not maybe I'm not doing that good in general in life, and I'm just not going to have sex. And that's not the rule that's going to really. Well, no, it's that's not the rule that's going to affect me.
Even if they pump you full of that gas.
Oh yeah.
Well, maybe then maybe the dumb guy IQ lowering gas and then the pheromones together.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's Andrew's pick. So
yes. Yeah, we'll just go. Yeah.
Well, all right. So there's
third sentence got in hot water and sparked a 20-minute discussion. There you go.
So there's two rules, right? The first two are and this kind of, I guess, jettisons into my pick, which I won't go into until everyone else has gone into theirs, but because I really care that way. But the third rule, I think, is covered in two different movies that we've done for this, and it's Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Blair Witch, which is kind of the don't go into that old, and Cabin in the Woods too. Don't go into that old house. You know what I mean? Don't.
The Harbinger.
Yeah.
Harbinger.
No. So I think that with the Harbinger, it touches on the same thing, but it's the same kind of rule, which I'll touch on that rule later. But I think the two movies that we really had that followed that rule are Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Blair Witch Project, and I think that the most terrifying rule to me, which is not my pick for best movie, but the most terrifying rule to me is the you fall asleep, you die rule.
And that goes back through the ages, right? To the dark ages. I mean, that's one of the reasons why that hit.
It's pretty dark when you're sleeping.
Yeah, but I mean, literally, when they talked about demons accosting you in the night and stuff, it goes. One of the reasons why it hits so hard is because that's a cultural memory.
So what I was trying to say is there's that last rule, and the most terrifying one to me, I think, is the first one, or the second one, the rule about you fall asleep, you die.
Well, I think Nightmare was the first horror franchise that took what was one-dimensional and made it into this three-dimensional thing, where it was, and then and I remember Wes Craven talking about it and saying him and Bob Shea from New Line Cinema fighting and stuff about certain parts in the film that they wanted and didn't want. and him saying that no one wanted to buy this film because they couldn't commit to the idea that it happened in dreams. Like they just didn't think that people would buy that concept. And it's actually one of the most frightening concepts, because you can't get, if someone can attack you in your dreams and you can't get out of it, it's like it brings this huge other attention to horror in general, especially the slasher kind of genre. But yeah, that was the biggest problem they had with trying to get someone to buy the film. Was it like everyone turned it down because they thought that the dream idea was not realistic, or no one would conceive that would be real or true. So, but when they managed to sell it, of course, it turned out that it actually scared the shit out of everyone. It was like a culmination of everything. But yeah, it was the first horror franchise, I think, that actually went from a one-dimensional plane to let's go, into like a more three-dimensional multi level.
Well, had there been a movie like that wasn't some crazy hallucinogenic fever dream style movie where the monster wasn't, tactile, wasn't like right there, but attacked you in this other space?
Like the fever dream style ones where it's like, and then they wake up or whatever, but never an actual being that's like a three-dimensional being that's involved, but in that other
who stalks you in your dreams. Like I said, unless you look back on old fairy tales and stuff, with
Wizard of Oz.
Yeah. No. Oh, sure. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, but not really. Mythology and stuff like that, it's there, but no one ever tried to put it into modern horror, like Wes did. And so I think that's the biggest thing about it. Also, like I was saying to you guys the other day, the blood flood,
right, exactly, the
blood flood, the scenes, the effects scenes are pretty amazing because they're all done by hand. This, it's stuff you would just no one had ever seen done, and that the guy Jim Doyle who did them got paid barely anything, and he had to create all this crazy shit with this tiny budget. And there was the big blood bath scene that comes up, and how he explained how he did that. And then I think the most exciting one is the one where it's Tina and the room is moving, and when they had to actually construct a room, and they're turning upside down.
Yeah. Isn't that cool?
And it's amazing, the way that they created that. And one of the scenes that always stuck with me, that I found as a child and teenager, was the bath scene. And watching, I didn't know this, but at the time, obviously, but the bath, on the other side, had a hidden bath chamber underneath, so that the guy who had the hands was down underneath the water. He was holding his breath and in a bottom chamber, that held his whole body. So then when he did the hands, I was that scene stuck with me, I think, for years. I mean, I reckon I was every time I'd see it and I'd cross my legs dear God, I just thinking about it.
First
you got
Psycho with the shower, then you got Freddy Krueger with the bathtub, but hey.
Yeah, that.
I love the actual episode that we did about Nightmare on Elm Street. Forrest described it as a bottomless bathtub.
Yeah, it's just but it's it's a night that. Really, that scene is it really is a nightmare. You're trapped in a small space, you're very vulnerable, and she's there, she said, the actress said it was being stuck in a gynecological chair for bazillion hours, just why they filmed it. And but yeah, that image itself just scares the living shit out of me, just thinking about that. If you were in that situation, I'm sure it would be the same as a male, but for a female, it was that was a very provocative thing
it gets you in
to have at that time. Like,
And I
wouldn't
love
have-
the fact that, like, I don't know if I know Renee, you have seen this, but everybody else, there's a fun horror movie called Jack Frost where they kind of recreate the scene where there's a carrot floating in the.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. There's just so many
anyway.
things like that. Like,
Yeah, which was a beautiful
and then, of
homage
course,
to that moment.
the ending, like I used to do it all the time, and I think my dad used to do it as well. Was like the 1, 2, 3, and it'd be like Freddy's coming.
And that sticks
you.
with you for days after you.
The
So
nursery
it's like
rhyme.
it was the bathtub scene, and then the 1, 2, 3, Freddy's coming for you with the girls, the skipping rope. That were the two that I would
1,
always
2, Freddy's coming for you. 3,
so-
4, better lock your door.
But it's so simplistic, but it works
5,
so
6,
well.
better stream on Twitch.
And I love also like the other have you heard the other tidbits about what things created the actual look of Freddy? Like
I think I have
the
that
one
too.
where like where he saw when he was young, he saw us like a burnt man, and that image scarred him, and that was a part of that whole face look.
Oh no,
And
we had. So I don't think we ended up playing this on the stream, but I had the makeup artist talking about how he was eating a slice of pizza, and he was trying to figure out how to do the burning across. I do have that clip somewhere.
Yeah.
Where
I think he said that, and then he said he also walked past some guy on the street who was drunk, who was wearing the hat.
Yeah.
And that,
yeah. And then they almost got rid of that.
Wanted to talk about Ayn Rand. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the best one of all, I think, which I think is just such a cool thing, is that Freddy Krueger is named after Fred Krueger, who was his childhood bully, who used to beat him up every day, and then he turned him into that character, which I think is so cool.
Hey Conan, do you know what they call that kind of hat? The fountain head.
Good. That's solid. That's solid.
Yes, all right.
My lady. By the way, real quick on Nightmare, I know we want to talk about other things as well, but I find something so evocative about the original one that you don't know anything about this guy. That like this guy is just haunting everyone's dreams, and he's just this terrifying thing you know nothing about of. Obviously, that couldn't last, especially with sequel after sequel. So I think they did a decent enough job with like, Dream Warriors, with the, bastard son of 100 maniacs. Like, they did a decent enough job with it. But for me, the more you know about Freddy Krueger, like the less frightening it is, which I think is so interesting when they did New Nightmare. And he basically was like, hey, and then people bag on Halloween for doing this, but they're the decanonization of like, actually forget about all that. We're just gonna go back to like the basics here. I like that. I think that's good.
But it was like one step further because it was meta.
Well, exactly. Way before it was cool to do that, like way before it was.
Before Wes Craven made it cool to do that.
Yeah.
But also the problem,
which is why isn't Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back?
Cock knocker. Favorite. But like, it's also all these franchises have that same where like they look like the original directors are amazing, but then all these people come in and do all these sequels and different things who are not the director or the writer, and then they all fuck with the story arcs and and everything like that, and so then everyone so I think like with Elm Street, my first will always be the first. Same with Halloween. Like the first is always my favorite because that's like the truest version. Then you kind of, as you go along, there's some that are got the better things and good things in them. But they're never the same as quite the first. Like even the new, like the new 2 new Halloweens that just came out, like that 2018, and then the one Halloween Kills that just came out now. Like we could have a whole other discussion about that. But
and we probably will when Conan has his.
And then we've got Halloween Ends when Conan, coming.
Yeah. I was gonna say.
I think that though, out of everybody that's really starred in one of those movies, Robert Englund is the most honest about that. in saying that, because there's multiple clips of him, and I want to play this last one before we go to Conan's, Conan, because you guys both picked Nightmare on Elm Street, right? That's your film for this, for the best one out of that list. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Conan definitely. I want to talk about Halloween. And I plugged in my hard drive, so I have all the clips that we've played for different streams now. But so I do want to say that.
So typical of a lady, Renee, a man already took your answer, and so now you need to work twice as hard.
And in this case, it was Super Mario.
I've got to say, it was incredibly hard to pick a film because I was it was very hard. Tied.
And we picked like, I mean, the ones that we really watched, and I know that. Well, I mean, like, we would have definitely had you on way more streams if we had known you, like before the Dawn of the Dead stream, like guest for like this whole month. But exactly, I am really glad that you're on this one. I am really glad that you were on Dawn of the Dead. But it would have, I think, been because we planned like a lot of these out guest wise at the beginning of the month, and it was like,
I should have had the idea sooner. Sorry.
Your fault.
Also, you're welcome.
I think that Robert Englund's been the most honest about the fact that he said every time they strove away from the original Wes Craven style of Freddy Krueger, he feels like they've lost something in the process, and I find him fascinating. Well, Wes Craven too, but I find Robert Englund fascinating because he is a London theatrically trained actor. Number one. Like when you actually hear him talk about like the struggle between good and evil, it's like he puts it in terms of like, literally more than centuries. I mean, since Greek mythology, like and plays back then, you know what I mean? Like he puts it in terms of these great, like the great struggle between good and evil, and Nancy as good to the point where it's like, she can't, she really can't like sin because it's literally a cut and dry good and evil archetype. So he puts it into these archetypical things, but then at the same time, because he's he's an actor and he's very flamboyant and theatrical, he's like, so his portrayal of Freddy Krueger as like this almost like theatrical character, like having like the lines that he kind of just spits out, and like, so I find those two things fascinating put together because I think that when people are kind of classically trained in terms of acting, like the way that they think about things are no longer just like, oh, well, like, there's the different schools of thought with it. Like, oh, well, someone's going to be method or someone's going to be this or that. And he thinks about it incredibly archetypically. And he's also gotten the actress that plays Nancy, I forget her name, to think about it.
Heather. Oh, shoot. What's her last
Heather
name?
Langenkamp.
Yep.
Yeah, I had a huge crush on her for years, so I know that name.
So they think about it in terms of like not just Nightmare on Elm Street, but like since Greek mythology, like these plays that have come out that good versus evil, like almost in biblical terms, like not in the sense of like, oh well, you transgress, but like in biblical terms, and like since the beginning of storytelling and human experience, and it's like amazing to hear them talk about that, and that's not something you necessarily hear other horror, like because the whole genre and like various subgenres of horror, like people come out of different areas of it. So the fact that he's like classically trained makes it like incredibly interesting to hear his thoughts about like, well, I don't actually like when I just kind of spit out these like comical lines necessarily, and like he's like I spit like he does them well, but like the flamboyant theatrical version of it is interesting on his part. This is the pizza clip though. This is the guy talking about. Well, first is Wes Craven talking about finding the look for him, but then it's the makeup artist talking about how eating a slice of pizza he realized that's what.
Yeah. Before you continue,
yeah.
Right.
No.
I
Go
was just
ahead.
going to say one thing before we move on from Nightmare is that a thing to remember with Nightmare, I think, is that this was the pivotal film for Wes Craven, for him taking the female character from being meek, weak, and like clumsy and just useless, and turning it the other way around. This was the first film where he actually made the female character stand up to the evil character, which is primarily a lot to do with his daughter, because the film he made before this was Swamp Thing. And, you know, she was like, why does the woman have to always fall over and be dumb? And like, you know, why doesn't she, whatever. And then this, of course.
Johnny Depp falls over all the time and is dumb.
Exactly. And he's wearing a bedroom top like this. Like, he seems like such a dump. But it's but this was the pivotal movie for, I think, for Wes Craven, for switching his, you know, archetype towards strong women. Because like you had Hills Have Eyes, all the women are weak and very like, oh. And same with, I mean, Last House on the Left is one of the most frightening things you've ever seen. And again, the women
Which
are.
we might be doing that in November at some point with Matt Binder, who was formerly on.
Yeah, that's one of the most horrific films. Like when you sit down and tear it apart.
So then it became a factor of how do we make them look old, and how do we? And so we sort of, I think, it just really emphasized the scarring as a much more outlandish element of his. And it added to the mask-like quality of it too, which I thought was good.
Jim Doyle, the special effects guy, brought me in on the first Nightmare on Elm Street and had me meet with Wes Craven. And Wes took me to lunch. Very nice guy, more like a college professor than a director. And he just basically, you know, discussed the film and his concepts for Freddy, and just basically explained. He's a burned up figure. He should be really scary looking, and you should see a lot of muscle under his skin, you know, with open sores and holes, and really disgusting to look at. And he said he was going to light it very dark, so everything should be like overly done, so you can really see it well. And one night I was eating pizza in a pizza parlor and was just kind of playing with the cheese with my fork. It was a pepperoni pizza. So I was kind of rearranging the cheese around the pepperoni, and I thought, this looks good. So instead of eating it, I just took it home and and used that as a guideline for creating Freddy's face.
How do you get ready to be Freddy? Ready to be Freddy? Boy, she can turn a phrase. Well, I tell you, I sit in the chair, and Kevin Yeager, who is the handsomest makeup man in the world, does my makeup for like 4 hours, and we drink a lot of coffee and we talk, and I get more and more ornery as they put more and more glue on me. And in about 4 hours, there's nothing left of Robert Englund. It's just this cantankerous cuss named Fred Krueger.
But how do you even look in the mirror? I mean, doesn't that frighten you? Because all I've seen of you is like a television promo for Nightmare on Elm Street. I've never forgotten it. I've seen that face once and it's burned in my memory.
Burned. Good choice of words, Val, because that's just what happened to Fred. He's disfigured from the vigilante parents that burned him to death. Remember, 2 wrongs don't make a right. And yeah, it's ugly. I've told this story before, but for anyone that hasn't heard it, I fell asleep in my honey wagon, my dressing room, in the making of part 1. And, you know, most movies are worried about losing the light. We were worried about getting the light because we shoot at night. And the dawn was coming up, hour of the wolf, whatever that time is, just before sunrise. And the AD banged on the door of my honey wagon. I had the lights off, and I sat up and looked in the mirror, and I'd forgotten that I was in the makeup. And I had morning mouth, you know, and everything else. And I was sort of like half asleep, and there was this bald little man looking back at me. It seared itself into my brain, that image. Yeah, I've scared myself.
By the way, so the backstory of that interview is that the entire time that interviewer is talking to Robert Englund, she's like, "I haven't seen anything you've done. I'm afraid of horror movies," and he just keeps fucking with her. Yeah. But then at the same time, like I watched the whole thing and she's being really fucking annoying about it. So he just keeps like doing these like one-liners and just like knocking it off her. Which I don't know. I respect the fuck out of, because he wasn't like he was like that much of a dick about it, but like he was in that horror mode where it's like, yeah, I would.
Like I said, I've never heard the phrase "Hour of the Wolf" before, but I'm totally here for it, especially as Conan actually means little wolf in Gaelic. So.
Ooh.
Halloween night. A small American town. 15 years ago.
Michael?
Halloween.
I spent 8 years trying to reach him, and then another 7 trying to keep him locked up because I realized that what was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply evil. I think he'll come back.
Exploring uncharted territory.
Totally charted.
Just talk.
Sure. The only reason she babysits is to have
Halloween.
Okay, Linda.
Come on out.
Halloween. The night he came home.
Halloween, I think, is so the rare example of something that's iconic and popular and maybe somehow underrated, even though it's basically changed culture in a bunch of ways. And one of the main reasons why we talked about this at length on the actual Halloween episode. But what I like about it is that the kids are not reduced to tropes. They haven't gotten to that point yet. They're like really fully rounded people. And you don't know that much about Michael Myers. You don't know. All you know is he's running around killing people. Like that. That's it. And like, to me, that is the bare essence of it's terrifying. He kills kids. This isn't like, you know, a situation where like, oh, there are the rules or whatever. There's no those rules that we think about have not been established yet. He's running around killing people, and people don't even necessarily know what's happening.
Too. He kills
the beauty too,
dogs.
Conan, is that he's not running.
He's
just
not running.
walking
He's very.
slow,
You know what he is doing? He's fucking
motionless.
driving. That fool is driving all over that movie.
Yeah.
You guys,
Yeah.
that's the one thing we didn't cover. And I was like, how is he driving this much? And who taught this
No, we-
motherfucker how to drive? Who taught him how to drive?
We don't worry, we
He's
can cover
driving
that.
and he's walking slow, doing that slow.
That was covered in 6, by the way. They do explain who taught him how to drive in part
Yeah,
6.
6. That's the druid one, right? Fuck 6.
Yeah, the druids taught him how to drive.
Yeah.
Is that the-
But I want to throw it out there. We
Did the
did
call.
cover. We did mention that Conan did go through this whole thing, and then you did say that it was 6. That this conversation did happen in the Halloween
Well,
episode.
I was trying not. Yeah, we went. I'm trying not to repeat, but like I said, we covered it adequately, right? I love the type of shot of the scene Michael by the bush, and then like cut again, and he's there. Like things that
That's
we think
the first time they showed Bush in a horror movie.
Things that we take for granted cinematically, those types of shots, Carpenter basically pioneered with that movie, and
He
so,
invented
so many
Batman
ways.
in that scene.
Yes. And so there's so many different ways that's been used over the years in like big blockbusters that's like, yeah, that's a Halloween thing. That's Halloween. And when it comes down to it, and for me, it came down to Halloween and Psycho. But I really thought that I was like, well, on the Psycho episode, I think we pretty much covered everything that I wanted to cover. Not that there isn't more to say about it, but with Halloween, and again, specifically because Halloween Kills was not out when we did the Halloween episode. So I haven't seen that now, and spoiler alert, everybody, they kind of lean more into the supernatural, like folktale thing at the end of it, and they attempt to make it about, oh no, it's a mob mentality, where I'm like, I'm sorry, motherfuckers, didn't this happen in 24 hours? And you guys were like, oh yeah, the Michael Myers, was that even real? That's some legend, whatever. And then suddenly it's like, evil dies tonight. It's like, whoa, that escalated quickly.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
Well, I thought that was a nod to 4. You know, it just seems like they're remaking the actual Halloween sequels into this new trilogy and not really treading new ground.
Right. They decanonized everything. I was like, well, here's what we're actually going to do. And I was like, all right. And I like the 2018 one. Okay. I thought it was good, but nothing touches the original. Like the original is, like I said, it somehow manages to be culturally ubiquitous in a way that has affected things way beyond the genre that it actually kind of pioneered, but then also manages somehow to be a little underrated as an actual film. And the story is crazy, and we adequately covered that. And we even talked about a bunch of things that I wanted to bring up here earlier. It's been discussed at length, but I mean, my pick's Halloween. It's got to be.
I really respect the fact that and I don't think this definitely wasn't on purpose, but I do respect that each of our picks follow a different one of those rules, which I think, you know, putting out I mean, I don't, well, I'll be honest, I was selfish. I had my pick, you know, a week before we even decided to do this. I was like,
you're the host. It's your right as the host.
But it was just like just thinking about which movie stayed in my head the longest. It was that one. You know what I mean? Like, so I didn't even expect that we were necessarily going to do a wrap up, but like in my own head, you know, a week before we decided to do a wrap up, like I was like, no, that's the movie that's affected me the most.
Well, and so if I may, on that, on rewatch with Halloween, I actually was like impressed about like, wow, this is taut. This is like tense and taut in a way that I know every square inch of this film. There's no reason I should be scared by it. I was like, oh, that's freaky AF.
Still
you know,
are
like,
though.
yeah, it's because it's a great film. It's
But
a
it's also-
legitimately great film.
The way I was gonna say, the everything from just the sound and the lack of body language, but there is body language, is just so spot on in the film.
Micro expressions. Joey Reed's gonna talk about how bring on that.
When you guys invited me to come on and I saw the list, I was like, well, shit, how am I supposed to pick a you know, something from this? Because I love Conan, so I will let him have Halloween. But I would have picked Halloween or Texas Chainsaw. Would have been my number one, then Nightmare. But like,
And then Andrew stole that from you, so there you go.
But
Sorry,
no,
I was busy drawing all day. If I realized that was yours, I would have gone with People Under the Stairs, just because it's like the bastard
is an amazing
stepchild.
film. And
Yeah,
this is what I-
absolutely
all the
is.
films on the list are amazing. So it was
Yeah.
like, how do I pick one and say that's the best? Because it's very hard. But if I had to
And
pick one,
Fool is in Fanboy 13, by the way.
yeah, I read that. Yeah, but so for me, I'm like just the extra here in the little in the show for the roundup. So I didn't get to be in all of them, but for my personal preference, the movies I watch repetitively would be Halloween and Texas Chainsaw.
I know, and we did talk about this in the Halloween episode, but the music is iconic and brilliant, and it's one of those things that, much like Tubular Bells, is inextricably linked with The Exorcist. Like if you hear that, if you hear those chords, you know that like, oh man.
Did you see I added it to Conan to my story promo for the show?
I did see that. That's awesome. Yeah, that was a nice move. Yeah.
Anyway, there was a moment that I really, really loved in our Halloween episode where you were like making a great point. You're making a great point, but then in the middle of your point, I went, oh,
yeah. there's always time for bits like that. That's that I'm never going to be mad at that. It makes for even when I'm getting like seemingly very frustrated with being unable to articulate my points, it all makes for a good show. Speaking of which, so yeah, the music is brilliant. And Halloween is my pick. And
you want me to replay the clip that we had cut for the Halloween music part of it? I mean,
yeah, why the fuck not? I mean, it's already 17 hours of this stream, right? So
I wasn't on the episode. I was just gonna say, Conan, what is your favorite or like most loved scene in Halloween? Because obviously I wasn't in the episode.
Yeah, sure. So I'll answer it this way: that I can tell you the scene that I somehow managed to forget that I think is brilliant. When Michael Myers shows up with the sheet on, with the sunglasses, I had somehow redacted that from my memory.
Is absolutely brilliant.
And I was like, "Holy shit!" Like it's not just that he's got the sheet on; he decided to put on the sunglasses too, which it was that small detail. I'm like, "Holy fuck! Well, who the fuck is this guy?" Like. That's amazing. Like that, and that shows a level of, as much as he's this malevolent, like sort of like force that's just around and like, you know, doesn't run, but he like is inexorable. He is inevitable. And then it's like, but he took the fucking time to put the aviators on, didn't he? I think they're aviators, right?
Yeah.
But I think so the real answer, we talked about it, like the mise en scene of the blink, like the bush, he's by the bush and then like he's not, which David Lynch totally homaged in Twin Peaks at one point too, which is really awesome. And not obliquely and exactly, but that to me inspired a certain type of filmmaking. And I think that's what comes to mind first right now, not the least of which is also the the falls out the window, lands, and then oh no, and he's gone now. What the fuck? Oh, crazy. And
they just Batmaned out.
Yeah, exactly.
It's weird that Batman's remembered for that, not Michael Myers. Like why aren't they saying that Batman Michael Myers out?
I hope Nolan at least bought John Carpenter a very nice dinner. Let's put it that way.
And also I was gonna say the Halloween, the guy playing Michael Myers. He only played Michael Myers in that first one, and it was just he was a mate for free. And when he said, "What do I do?" and he's never acted before, he was just like, "Walk slow."
Just walk real slow. Yeah, exactly. That was the direction. Make one of those iconic characters in like an entire genre. Just walk slow. All right, I can do that.
Well, his dad was a really famous choreographer who had literally directed movies starring Fred Astaire. Like literally been the choreographer for Fred Astaire movies and that whole entire genre of like dancing movies. So it's really funny to hear John Carpenter and Deborah Hill talking about the history of their friendship with this guy, because they're like, listen, he's got good legs, like he knows how to, he's like a very like his dancing moves. And then the guy later turned out to become a dancing coach. And he's still like, oh, that's not why I was cast as Michael Myers. And every interview, they're like, no, that's why we cast our friend whose like dad was a Fred Astaire's choreographer. Like, no, we did it because he was good on it. Like he was dainty on his feet. And it's like, I find that fact of it really hilarious.
It's a great little factoid about it. And I actually did think about for the and last thing for me on this. One of the craziest scenes I think in the movie is when Laurie is running from house to house and she goes to the one house and bangs on the door and they just turn off the lights and close the curtains. And we talked about like the suburban, the like suburban nightmare aspect of things and like placing it within that time period or whatever. But there was something that was so horrifying to me about like that of like, hey, there's a killer after me. Oh, let me go to the neighbor. And they're like, nope. Fuck you.
That's kind of the rise of suburbia, right? Like it's the rise of, number one, I mean, the idea that your neighborhood is safe, nothing bad is going to happen, but also this denial that could be the case. And as suburbia kind of gets more built up, like you don't know your neighbors anymore. Like it's not like you're a bunch of farmers living in like intrinsically knowledgeable area where it's like, well, we're like the 4 people living in this area. It's like a bunch of houses look the same. You're like, I don't necessarily want to know the person living next to me. I don't necessarily want to. I mean, in some cases, like you want to know their business because you feel like, oh well, this intrinsically matters for my business. Like I don't want to live near a bunch of rabble rousers or whatever. But like, at the same time that that's happening, like it's also like I don't want to know that there's a killer in my neighborhood. Like there isn't.
I mean, literally, my neighborhood, neighbor next door, COVID denying gossip. The neighbor over here, Tourette style borderline psychopath. So okay, yeah, I get it.
It's okay. My neighbors are always drunk out in front of these stairs, talking very loudly, which you might be able to hear them right now.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry I live next to you. Just kidding.
He's right here and he can hear you. Yeah.
I only have one more thing for Halloween for Conan, and it was I wanted to ask you what your thoughts were. Yeah, so what I wanted to say is like the Halloween franchise and obviously Halloween fans, they all have a very strong view on, the story, like kind of arc behind it, and obviously through the different films and the changes and all that kind of stuff. But in the first film, we were led to believe, obviously, that Michael killed his sister, and of course Laurie is. The film's lack of blood was offset by. You're right. Laurie is his sister. She was adopted out, and she's also his biological sister, and that's why there's that affinity with him and her. And then in further films, then Wes tried to backtrack and say that he found it scarier if they weren't siblings. Vice versa. Whereas, see, I find it scarier that they are. I love that arc that they are related, because later on, like in when they tried to reboot with like the H2O like resurrection films, they came back to that, and there's that amazing scene where Michael is on the ground and Laurie is like wrecked, and she's about to wreck him, and she reaches her hand out to him, and he's looking at her with these sad eyes, and she's looking back at him with these sad eyes, like they belong together kind of thing. And she reaches out her hand like almost to be like my brother, like Michael type thing, and then instead you think this is going to happen, locks her head off. She ends up locking her head off. But like it's that little tweak of the fact that not only is he that crazy person who'll just kill everyone, but it's also that his obsession with his own family, which is that I love that aspect of it. So in some of the later films where they take it away, I was a bit bummed out.
It hits different,
yeah. Like in the 2018 Halloween, they tried to make it disappear, but then I heard an interview with him recently where it's kind of built more into the next films, like with Halloween Kills, and it's sort of slightly there, but only subtly. But in Ends, it's there. So it's kind of like it was there really full on, then left completely, then kind of came back. And I was like wondering on your view, what you think about, like, given the first film, that's the way we would have thought it was. So for me, I thought that was brilliant. And then I kind of was like, he is scary as fuck regardless, but I love that. My psychology part of me loves the backstory and idea of the fucked upness of him being obsessed with his family members, not parents, but like the siblings, like
who are ultimately in a familial hierarchy at the same power level.
Yeah.
Right? And even like the power level changes depending on the events that are going on and whatnot. I think there's something to that. I also think that like for all and you basically named like one of the best moments of using that relationship, it was kind of just a squandered extra statistic for most of those films. And I think it was fascinating the fact that the 2018 movie, they made it about trauma. And it wasn't familial trauma. It was trauma. It was something akin to PTSD that defined this woman's life, changed the entire relationship with her daughter to the point that she was like, basically grew up in a bunker. That was fascinating to me. And that was really
cool set up. I thought
Yeah.
that was really. I liked the way that they did that.
I will
would
say this.
Her sister. I mean, her sister. I wanted to punch her daughter, like, because I thought she was.
Oh,
such a
Judy
shit.
Greer. Yeah.
I was like, shut up, you bitch.
Yeah,
And
if
she's
she
like,
wasn't so hilarious and cute, I might have felt the same way.
I couldn't stop thinking about Arrested Development, where she's
Yeah.
like, Michael, look at these, and Michael obviously is the character. Michael Bluth is the Arrested Development character, so she could have just showed her breast implants to Michael Myers, and maybe.
And also, can we just say Archer too? She's brilliant in Archer as well.
Yeah.
She's a very
like the way that character was written, I was like, you're a shit. Like,
well, she gets so that's the one Halloween Kills thing I think that got better over the 2018 movie is Judy Greer has more stuff to do in the newer one, and she's a more well-rounded character. And no spoilers, but
I haven't watched Halloween Kills yet because I've literally just watched the movies for this
one. Yeah, no.
Yeah. Well, I will say they name-checked Ben Tramer in Halloween Kills, so I'm very pleased by that.
Which I was going to say, I thought of you when I saw that. I was like, oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So if I made a statement
in Kills.
Right. So Renee, to answer your question from my perspective, I think the 2018 movie we made about trauma, I think, was absolutely brilliant in the best possible way that they could have gone with it. But I like the idea that it was just PTSD, not familial trauma, because I think it's almost since then culture has changed so much that the idea of like, oh, it's the psychopathic family member or whatever, that is now a trope in and of itself. So I thought it was brave for them to be like, yeah, maybe not so much with any of that. So that said, when they originally did it, it was like, oh, crazy. Oh my God, that's awesome. But it explains why he's doing it. And again, I'm gonna go back to I do think that is absolutely like the family member that goes, batshit and, offs everyone. Obviously that's terrifying. Everyone's very relatable to a certain degree. But the fact that it makes Michael more of a just mysterious entity of like, why is he doing it? That's what he does.
Yeah.
And like,
that's
it's a different track.
it.
One's better, not the other. I'm not going to say, but it's a different track.
So I think that horror movies become horrifying when everybody can kind of feel like this could happen to me. So that's why I feel like Nightmare on Elm Street is one of the most terrifying movies because, or psychologically speaking, at least, because like you can't not fall asleep. You could take
your grandmother's definitely killed somebody.
Yeah. The thing I loved about the documentary Nightmare on Elm Street is
no, but like so like you can't not fall asleep. Like you can take caffeine pills for a couple days.
You're gonna go.
You can take Adderall for a couple days. You can, I guess, become a cokehead, but like still at some point, there's a point where your body is just gonna give out on you, and you're gonna be asleep, and there's no avoiding it. And the fact that Michael Myers is just out there killing at random and just is like, oh, look, this person's in front of me. They remind me a little bit of whatever you want. You project your own nightmares onto Michael Myers. He's a blank slate. So and John Carpenter talks about that at length. And there's, it's been discussed at length by a lot of filmmakers. I think that because
I love the aspect of him being like, in the 2018 and stuff, I like the fact that they focused on the trauma, but I also found it. The only thing that I didn't. The only thing was the just like even like one word mention of the fact that it was her brother. Like it was kind of like just like white clean completely. I think that
on
was trauma, But I think like in the other films, like you've got that ridiculous Halloween one where there's the cult. Which makes no fucking sense.
That one. Yeah, I hate that one. I've seen it like 3 times.
That's the worst thing in the world. But like, in the first film, I thought he was scary as hell because he doesn't seem to have he doesn't care who he kills. But I also thought that the twist with Laurie was not necessarily that he's out to get Laurie, but that anytime he comes across Laurie, it's like something in his mind clicks.
He's like, hey, you.
Yeah.
Whoa, whoa.
He has no reason or rhyme for the reason.
That's the bitch that tried to kill me. She's out here. She's trying to kill me. You know what? Jason, Freddy. That's her. That's her.
This Laurie Strode over here is busting my balls. Let me tell you.
We matched on Tinder. She didn't say nothing. I said, hey.
Yeah, I was just interested to see because I know it's such a. I mean, people fight about this a lot, and I've seen it in so many documentaries. Everyone fighting from every angle on what, and that's where I was talking about how you have that issue when you have a franchise that has all of these different films with different directors and different writers. You know, whereas if you had a franchise, you know, if he had have done all of the Halloween films, like maybe we would be in a different place, like.
Which he didn't.
Because you have all these people coming in, chopping and you know, and then of course you have the Rob Zombie versions, which a lot of people disliked, which I really liked, but I didn't see them as a part of the Halloween franchise.
Yeah, it's almost its own thing. Yeah, it shouldn't be looked at.
I saw it as a totally different thing, and that's because I like. Some people don't want origin stories, but I'm like obsessed with psychology and so origin stories interest me. Like so when
I think that there are franchises and moments where you do want an origin story, right? Like there's characters where you're sitting there and you're like, you know what, I want to know why they're doing this, and like where the fuck they came from. Specifically with Michael Myers, I think the reason that he's so terrifying is because it's a blank slate. You know what I mean? Like you don't know why he's necessarily done things.
Even in
I don't disagree with you on wanting origin stories for a lot of characters. Like,
for some you don't want them, but what I enjoyed about Zombies versions was I saw them as like completely outside the franchise.
Mm-hmm.
I don't associate them with the franchise. I associate them as a completely separate thing. So when you watch them, they're just uniquely zombie. But I love the idea that someone tried to figure out him as a child and where it went wrong.
All right, so Conan.
Well, we're still on me. Yeah, you're right.
This
is so I did get it up. Here and you know before this.
Okay, I was gonna say Out of Context Theater presents. Yeah.
The film's lack of blood was offset by one of its most distinguishing features, Carpenter's brilliantly menacing score.
I had to do the music to Halloween in about 3 days. I had to do the whole score so I could go in and perform it and get out. My dad had taught me 5/4 time on a set of bongos when I was young. So just to teach me some rhythms. They're not 4/4 time, it's off one. And so I decided just to do that as an octave on a piano.
I've never seen a movie completely transform. I learned a great lesson about the power of music and sound effects and sound on that picture. I know it's true of every picture, but in this film, it made a quantum leap. There's no way to describe the difference between. In fact, if you want to explain it to yourself, try watching the movie one time with the sound off.
We used John Carpenter's 1978 film as our creative foundation.
Carpenter made some of my favorite films, and it was nerve-wracking to go in and pitch to one of your idols.
His cell phone goes off while we're talking to him, and it's the theme from Halloween, and that's when I realized where I am and who I'm talking to.
Original Halloween basically had a bunch of equipment and one guy. In this score, you have a bunch of equipment and 3 guys, so it's 3 times the score.
We knew we wanted to use the themes from the first movie. So before we even got started, we organized how we were going to arrange it.
We have the original score, which was done in 1978. So what we're doing is building on that.
The original was done with just my dad working with synthesizers and a piano. So the way that we're doing pays homage to the original and it keeps the feel. I don't think you can have a real Halloween movie without my dad.
Cody's more precise on the keyboard than I am. He knows what's going on.
Kids in my class knew who my dad is, and they said, you got to play the theme for me. So I've been playing that all my life.
We're building with brand new sounds, brand new techniques.
I do the experimenting on my own and then present sounds that I think John might like. So sampling old synths, and then John can play them on the keyboard.
And get approximate sounds of what I dealt with. So that's Daniel's magic. He's the sound man in this whole thing.
We would start And then suddenly 5 hours would have gone by, and it was kind of a stream of consciousness. To work with John, who created the original, and then carry that on to work with David, it's really been a great experience for us.
The sound of Halloween is so iconic. The three of them combined to create a once-in-a-lifetime Carpenter score for us.
All right. Yes.
Awesome.
I really want to see them play live. I've heard that that John's live show with Cody is amazing. He came here once and did it. He does every film like that he's ever done, and apparently it's just phenomenal. But how weird is it? I find Cody very strange to look at. He looks like a scared little man. He's just like.
By the way, Conan, do you have somewhere to be?
What do you mean?
Because I don't know, you seem to be complaining about the time of this. This I'm gonna have to edit down into a less than hour episode.
Tony, who plays bass in Conan Neutron: The Secret Friends, is maybe the biggest John Carpenter fan I know. And he saw one of the shows and he was like, it was amazing. It wasn't like amazing for a director. It was legit amazing. And he is not prone to hyperbole.
I've not heard it. And everyone I know that has seen it live has said it's phenomenal. And you can't just, mind blowing.
Yeah.
Yo, I don't know. I was hanging out, but when I heard I was like, oh!
It's my jam! Oh!
Let's be on acid back in
the ringtone went off. I was like, I hate ringtones and I have mine off, but when I have it on, I always forget what's on my phone. And so for me, I have when I get a message, it's dun dun from Law and Order, SVU. And then
that's great.
When my phone rings, it's the X-Files. So and I always forget, and if I'll be like in a meeting or like somewhere, it just starts up, and everyone just looks and I'm like,
something mysterious is happening.
The text is out there. I feel like it's like a big dick energy though to walk into a room and like that's John Carpenter, I mean, and like your own most famous song is the one thing.
Badass though. I'd be like, if you're John Carpenter, like, and he's released like one of my friends is on the record label that releases his records, and if you were like he sells so many of these, and like he makes new ones every year, like themes 1, themes 2. I think it is big energy, but like the guys, he's got like I feel like if anyone's got the gusto to be able to do it, it is him. Like fucking swing that dick out there, you know, while you're doing it. Like, you know what I mean?
There's your clip for the show.
I made Halloween, bitches. Like you can't beat that, you know. So I think
that's gonna be Renee's. That's gonna be Renee's own you know phone. Like when she gets a text, you're gonna say, "Swing that dick."
I made Halloween, bitches. The fuck did you do?
I mean, listen, but like the thing is that it's not just like because there's two sides of this, right? If John Carpenter had just made Halloween, hadn't had a successful career as a director, hadn't directed like all of these movies that you know everybody talks about for decades, and he just had the Halloween theme as his and they're like, hey buddy, like we know you made the first one, do you want to do the music for this one? It could be like very sad. The fact that he's had like an incredibly full career and just made like banger after banger film, like walking into somewhere and having the Halloween theme as your like ringtone is just big dick energy. But there's also a world where it's like that was like the one thing you did. You know what I mean? Like, and John Carpenter hadn't succeeded after that, and he's just like, like, oh, buddy.
We get it. We remember. It was good. We get it.
I think I would kind of give him a hug. Like, I'd kind of like be like, dude, yeah, man, you did a good job. Like, he's obviously very proud of that.
No, but exactly. If that's his one film, you're like, oh, like.
I mean, imagine being in a store or somewhere and Halloween goes off on someone's phone and you turn around and it's John Carpenter. I think that would be the most iconic, amazing fucking moment in life. Like, you know, you're just like standing there going about your business and then you hear it and turn around and it's fucking John Carpenter. That would be the best thing ever.
What happened was true. The most bizarre and brutal series of crimes in America.
Stop! Stop!
This is the movie that is just as real, just as close, just as terrifying as being there. Even if one of them survives, what will be left? The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. After you stop screaming, you'll start talking about it.
So Renee, I 100% agree with what you're saying about Blair Witch Project. Touching on Texas Chainsaw Massacre, because we did watch them back to back, and I think they are following the same rule, which is like the don't go into that old house, don't go into those woods, don't touch those things, stop touching those things. Somebody literally comes out to you and says, hey, don't mess with
maybe
this
don't
thing.
dick around with that. Yeah
It's like when you're all, I imagine that you're the same, because I do this when I'm watching a film like that. I yell out. I'm like, oh, even though I've seen the film 50 times and I still yell out, for fuck's sake.
Yeah.
What moron would walk in there? Like, and you like the whole way you're like, don't walk in there. Come on, no. Oh, you fucking dick. And then like constantly the whole time you're like going, oh, like they constantly just break it every time, and you're like,
I think that's a perfect reason to talk about Texas Chainsaw Massacre before Blair Witch Project, because I don't necessarily think that was something that you were willing to yell about in 1974 when Texas Chainsaw Massacre comes out. I mean, the fact that they have to have the father, who it took me 3 times watching it to realize that that's the father and not just like another, I was trying to get there.
Yeah.
I listened to multiple podcasts and documentaries about like whatever. They're like, oh, it's 3 generations in the house. And I realized like the guy that's at the gas station is their father, and every generation obviously becomes more inbred. So it's interesting. But like, so the fact that Texas Chainsaw Massacre as a movie has to have that guy standing in front of it who becomes in Cabin in the Woods the harbinger, like the person that's like, hey, don't go in there, don't touch that thing, comes, I think, specifically from that movie and continues into Blair Witch Project for sure, as like a character just being like, hey, maybe this is not something you want to mess with, maybe, like, you know what I mean? And Blair Witch Project does it brilliantly because they have like a bunch of different characters being like, oh, I remember that, and then giving them the warning, but without actually having like a harbinger character going like, hey, don't go in that house. But the fact that, Texas Chainsaw Massacre literally has the father being like, you don't want to go mess with no old house. And then they're like, oh, that's my, my father owns that house. And they're like, those girls don't want to go mess with that house. And it's like, all right, well, it's the rattlesnake, right? Like it which makes it very, very Texas that there's the rattlesnake that hits you with the rattle beforehand. Like you realize like, oh, this is the rattle. They're saying don't go to that place. You probably will assume that the barbecue that they ate was human, but like wasn't necessarily, you know what I mean? Like this was the rattle on the rattlesnake that says, don't go to that place.
Yeah, I would have heeded the warning and not gone there. I'd be like, Yep. All right.
Same.
Sounds good.
Yeah. And even
You
when
don't have to tell me twice. I'm out.
I think I said yesterday when they're driving and there's that scene where when they're getting out of the van, and we haven't even gotten that far into the movie, and you just want to grab that wheelchair and fucking push Franklin down the hill. Like that's the first thing I would have done. Would be like,
Oh man,
I would have been like,
I don't know.
we're never gonna survive with this dipshit. Roll him straight off the hill and let him go. Because he
Interestingly, the actor that played Franklin,
punishing characters.
the actor that played Franklin was doing it method, like wasn't a talent, like wasn't a well rehearsed actor, but was in Franklin as a character for the entire filming. And
so infuriating because I was like, kill that guy. I was about to say the C word then. And didn't come
almost had it.
It was close. But I was
that
like, please, someone just kill him. Like, hurry up. Like, if I just would have pushed him down that hill, I would have been like, you're a Punisher. Like, I know you're related to, I don't care. Push you down. Put him as the bait. Get him killed first.
It's gonna be a much shorter movie. If you
drive off. I would be brutal if I was ever in a horror scenario. I
feel like the reason they don't have Outback horror here is because Outback horror in general would be far more brutal than like people driving through Texas horror. Like everything already wants to kill you. So the instinct that you have,
it's like, oh, look at this cute little wallaby. Oh dear God, no!
Is that a puppy? Oh no, that's a dingo, and it ate my baby.
Dingo-Ate-My-Baby. It's my favorite.
You do realize
she's
that's
been exonerated.
That's going to be the one thing now that I use as a promo for this.
She's been exonerated from that. They're blaming the dingo. I still think that bitch did it. But you know, this is a controversy around the whole of Australia that's been going on for like 30 years. It's like her story never made sense. Nothing. There's the evidence, like you know, the whole thing has been like an up and down. Who knows what really happened? But I feel like she did it and blamed it on a dingo. They go through the hick kind of area, and like that to me is like red flag number one when they get to the you know the petrol station. It's like, this is not a place you should stop. The hick thing is like on its own is a whole that's a whole genre in horror.
Yeah, I mean,
a genre
I
starting
come from a hick-ass part of California.
You know,
I
it's
know
all
it very
about
well.
going to those hicky towns with fucked up inbred families and.
Oh, I mean, listen, upstate New York is all that, and I'm not in that part of upstate New York. I'm in the part where people are wonderful and it's the best place around.
But it is just north of you, bro. I remember. I remember visiting one of my friend's parents, and like they had all these TVs outside. but no.
The thing is, like I was just saying, like the hills have eyes. Like those inbred like people, like it's that whole genre of, you know, the genre of the inbred hick isolated town.
But Renee, they're just trying to get away from the hustle and bustle of daily life. That's all they're trying to do.
Well, they're gonna die, Conan. They're gonna die. It's gonna be really bad.
That I feel like bringing it
They're
back.
gonna get eaten, and you know, it's gonna be someone's gonna get raped. I could, you know, there should be a warning.
There'll be a tarantula that just shows up.
Anyway, bringing it to Texas Chainsaw Massacre specifically.
Yes.
I think that there is also an element of deindustrialization that comes into it, which is a conversation that we very much had during the stream, and it's something that I, you know, think about a lot, just in general, like the idea that, you know, maybe the one thing your family has been trained to do is to work at the slaughterhouse, like, and in Texas, obviously, in the rural parts of Texas, there are a shitload of cows. I went through Texas, there were a shitload of cows. Also in Vermont, there's a shitload of cows. Like it's not like a just Texas thing, but specifically in Texas, I mean, they're known for their cattle.
And I mean, but the big difference though is Vermont's not known for their cattle drive. I mean, yes, they do run cows through Burlington. Burlington?
Yeah,
I think it's Burlington.
Burlington. I was just there, you know, 3 weeks after we started the show. I just those are like the two places.
No,
that
not Burlington. Brattleboro. They have the Brattleboro running of the cows.
That's also in Vermont.
So every city in Vermont has a B name. So it's like, you know,
Bernie City, folks.
Yeah, there's like
Is there
Bernie,
someone have
there's
a photo
Brattleboro,
to
there's Bennington, there's Burlington, there's
I want someone to prove this to me. Can someone Google? I want to see what a toilet seat.
I don't have to Google them. I've seen them. They are.
Everything's bigger in Texas.
I'm just trying to find a picture that shows me that toilet seats in Texas are bigger.
Look at LBJ's. Look at LBJ's fat ass.
They kind of look the same. I'm confused.
Well, yeah, that's because your butt's not sitting on it.
No, but like,
wait,
are they bigger as in they're rounder, or like what's the deal
Andy, it was
here?
definitely you that I talked about the LBJ thing where he's talking about the pants, and he's like, he's like, I need bigger pants, and I need to go from my balls to my bunghole or whatever.
Yeah, I need like an extra inch and hang to the left.
That is an American president from Texas.
He is ordering pants.
I guess it's switched, so we could react to that. But anyway, so I think that the cattle thing though, definitely is pretty. It was terrifying for a second. I saw the GIMP from last night's. You covered up Renee. You covered up the one reason that anybody would want to watch this stream.
I'm googling toilet seats right now. That is fucking bizarre. Why?
It is bizarre.
Well, it's so
get
the spiders don't have enough space to put all their legs on the sides like they do in Australia.
I was thinking the toilet would be bigger.
You better
like the whole
you better be paying attention to this, because this is Twitch affiliate level content.
Classic content. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I've just never seen this. I'm just perplexed by why
and
you
not
need all
just
that
this
extra
channel,
seat.
Twitch. We are on Renee's.
Do people have bigger bums in Texas?
We're on Conan's Twitch. I'm just saying.
Monetize all them shits.
I think that so in this case, the deindustrialization point is the most important, because if you've been in a rural area for that long, let's say, and we're taking the movie at face value that your family's decided to be inbred. If your family's been inbred to that level, and the one thing that they've really been trained generation to generation to do, which is what they implied within this movie, which is why I think it's economically accurate, is, you know, the 70s being a big point of the industrialization, where the air guns, you know, take over instead of having somebody that just hits the cows in the head with mallets. And I don't work at a slaughterhouse. I don't know anyone that works at a slaughterhouse. I don't know whether that's the time that really happened, but throughout the United States, there is the deindustrialization point, which is, you know, like all of a sudden you did have your job automated away. A lot of times things got globalized. People bought steaks from other people bought their cows and their steaks from other countries. You know what I mean? Like,
now the one thing is that like the question that I have about this is when did the family actually do this? Because for the most part, Texas delivers their cattle live to Fort Worth, where they have a massive slaughterhouse, and then distribute the meat across the country via the train yards. So this is
Was it in the film? Remember, there's the abandoned abattoir. That's like, so at some point the town must have been relatively bustling.
Yeah, but how far back is this? Because
it had to have been quite far, I'd imagine, for it to get to that desolate state where there's only like very minimal people left. You know, like
yeah, but it also, I mean, the slaughterhouse still seems to be in use, and it seems like, I mean,
well, yeah,
it's the grandfather thing, right? Like it's maybe a generation at least apart from things, but it also seems like the family of, I mean, our old buddy Franklin, friend of show, seems like his grandfather.
I just want to make a T-shirt, like just push that cunt down the hill.
Oh my God, it came through, and Conan wasn't even here to hear it. No, no, but like Franklin's grandfather would have assumably been selling his cattle, and who knows if when the family moved away from that point. And it seems like the grandfather of and I do respect that they kept Franklin in there as a character, because there does seem to be cultural.
It's incredibly rare, and like as much as I really can't stand actors, I really respect them for having someone like this disabled and in a wheelchair and have a major role in the film and not be used as like a tool to make fun of.
Pushed down the hill.
Yeah, exactly. But they're not making fun of him. They're being not like, he doesn't play on his disability, which is like even in
he's annoying
modern
for other reasons. I mean, like
in
the
modern,
fact that he also has to be
Whereas in
pushed around
modern
has nothing to do with his disability. It
Yeah,
has to do with his
that would be quite rare
Asperger's
at
or whatever.
that time in history. You know what I mean? Whereas like even now, it's very rare in a film to have someone who's disabled in a wheelchair, and it's not the focus of what's going on. Whereas with Franklin, it was just like, you're a Punisher, whether you're in a wheelchair or not.
Yeah.
Like, you're just a Punisher. But like no one seems to address the
taking
wheelchair
himself
part.
around, right? Like the fact that he's in a wheelchair, maybe he needs more help. Like he needs people to be there for him to help, but he's also like the amount of annoyingness that comes with that character has nothing to do with the wheelchair part. It has more to do with
Exactly, that's what I mean. Like, it's
like,
nothing to do with that, and they don't ever, not once in the film do they ever draw attention or anything to the fact that he's in the wheelchair and it's such a burden for them to have him like in the wheelchair. Like he just kind of rolls around, and there's only I think a couple of points where he gets help, but like he's doing his thing. Like
the burden comes from him having terrible social skills. Like,
exactly,
like,
it's just him as a person. It's not his disability. It's just unfortunate.
And
by the way,
ask all the annoying questions instead of actually buying anything and getting in the way of the people trying to buy stuff.
Yeah,
I just looked it up. The Fort Worth Stockyards opened up in 1866 under various different ownerships over the the 110 years between that and the movie coming out, more or less.
But still, I mean, it's still a similar concept, right? Like if you were a cattle farmer, you would have to sell your cattle to a certain place, which makes sense that they're.
And we don't know where in Texas this is, like how close this is to like a.
It seems like it's far, but I know that the actual place is not that far, is it? From Boston?
Well, I mean that's the fun thing about Texas. I lived in a dry county, which means that they couldn't sell alcohol in city limits.
Yep.
However, there are unincorporated parts of the county where they have bars and stuff where you can go and drink and see live music and good honky tonks.
Some people call them a roadhouse.
Well, you know what?
All
my exes live in Texas, and they all used to work at the slaughter now.
And by the way, that's a bit of a teaser for Roadhouse next month, right? We're doing that still, right?
Oh my God! Can I please be involved in that?
Yes,
because
100% you can.
I just watched that last night, and I have so much to say.
All right, so
also, did you talk about in the Texas Chainsaw, how it goes from that beginning bit to that half an hour at the ending of complete and fucking insanity? Like, where everything goes just fucking insane. Like, recently I rewatched it and I was stoned, and it was not a good idea. That's all I'm gonna say. And
that's a terrible idea, Renee. What were you doing?
The 30 minutes of that
I can't wait to be hungry.
Yeah, it just like went. It was like, yeah, let's watch Texas Chainsaw. Watching it, yeah, awesome. And then all of a sudden, it's like a switch is flicked, and it turns to just next level insanity.
Well, yeah, no, and
there's movies like *Malignant* does that, right? It does it in a different way.
That scene, I think I mentioned, there's the scene we talked about in *Malignant* where I was like, "Fuck to the year!" That bit in where she's in the prison, I was like, that is an amazing scene. And a lot of people bag the film, but even if you don't like it, it's worth watching for that one scene.
Oh yeah, that last half hour's like good stuff.
I mean, yeah, but that scene is just gold. I was like, oh, I haven't seen a scene like that in years, since old school like horror. So I was like impressed with that bit at least.
So my spiel on this, I guess, and I know I really, the fact that I kind of interrupted everyone to get distracted in all of their, work throughs of movies. I don't, but I do agree with that point. Like, you can kind of skip the first. I mean, you can kind of skip the first hour of Texas Chainsaw Massacre for that reason. Like, in some ways, not like, definitely not. You shouldn't, but like you can in the sense of each character kind of goes into the house or gets in the way of Leatherface and then gets killed in a different way. The movie really does get crazy in that last 35 minutes where she finally gets chased from the house itself or around the house itself, because at that point Leatherface, but I mean it's the rattlesnake theory, right? Like he's been disturbed to the point where he's like, all right, well, let me make sure there aren't other people in my in my yard. And then he saws Franklin in half, which most sympathetic moment of the movie, I think, in terms of in terms of what Leatherface does. Like, what I mean? Like, he's kind of just bitching, and then you're like, oh yeah, all right, good, cool.
You also get the impression though, like I feel like they, like his family facilitate, like if not encourage or somehow made him that way.
Yeah.
Like,
no, and there's rape overtones, I think. Like,
like he's very much like, it's like they made him into that. They made him Leatherface. It's not.
He's the grandmother or the mother in some sense, right? Like he comes out with the makeup on, and he's like sounding like Beaker from the Muppets. Like it's kind of amazing that that's the guy's voice in this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, instead of being like, oh, I'm gonna kill you, it's like I don't know. So I do find that it does seem like that. It does seem like he seems like he's
the way the father and the grandfather and that like command him and like tell him like.
Well, the father, I don't think the father really commands anyone. The father is kind of just.
He's just gross. He's really like a that gross, creepy, misogynistic, foul thing going on where you just like.
Yeah. But like that's also something that you can play off of in two different directions, right? Because when he first encounters them at the gas station, he's like, "You don't want to go near no old house." It's like it feels like that's someone that's being incredibly paternalistic. That's someone that's being incredibly condescending. But that's not somebody that is warning you, "Hey, don't go to a house because we're going to eat you." That's someone that's like being paternalistic and condescending in the sense of like, "This is the middle of nowhere. Don't go bother people." You know what I mean? Like, and then he focuses on the women being like, oh, your women don't want to go to no old house, like, and then you realize later on, like, he's kind of trying to protect them in the sense of he doesn't necessarily want to kill them, like, you know what I mean? Like, maybe he would have just had them eat the barbecue, which may or may not be human barbecue, and do whatever, like, you know what I mean? But like, you don't necessarily get the feeling that he would have by himself called Leatherface and been like, hey, or like called, his much crazier hitchhiker fucking son, who's like
the dude in the car when he's like, and like you're just like, yeah, that's when I would have sped off.
Yeah, that you don't, but and capitalizing on a fear of hitchhikers that I think was built up during the 60s, and during the Manson
that was also the period where it was like so many serial killers in that period that were targeting hitchhikers as well. So it was such a huge, it was something that already had fear in a lot of areas already as well. Like not to pick up hitchhikers.
People picked up dingoes.
But if I saw that guy on the side of the road, I wouldn't pick him up. I mean,
no. I gotta say, the best film about hitchhiking is definitely The Hitcher by Ida Lupino, which was done a couple decades earlier. One of the best films about hitchhiking, certainly in a horror context, and it was basically predated most of the genre.
You get the feeling throughout, I mean, I don't know. They're being warned, and that's a trope that's continued on through horror, and that
I still get like tweets about it, mostly because like the bit you said, like how at the station he says don't go there. I also like I'm torn between whether he's saying that because he just wants them to be left alone, or whether he's saying that because he's secretly wants them to go there. Like, he's got this kind of creepness about him that I feel like it's hard. I don't feel like he's a genuine person that would actually be like trying to help them. So I feel like he's almost
he's not a
helpful that way.
He's not a helpful friend. But
no, that's what I mean.
He's not a helpful harbinger.
Yeah, like he's saying don't go there. But I think what he's saying is don't go there. Your women won't want to go there. By saying that, he's like, bring the woman, come to our house. Like, you know, I feel like it's almost that's the vibe you feel when you're watching him. Like, I'm like,
it's also not clear. It's not clear whether the barbecue he gives them is barbecue or whether it's like, you know.
Yeah, it's kind of. I feel like it's kind of implied that it's human.
Yeah, but I think
especially when you see like the car wrecks and you realize that they've been doing this to loads of people.
It's the same. The cannibalism of it has to make you wonder: have they been eating human the whole time, and what's going to come of that? Like the cannibalism, because it's just something that's so abhorrent to most people. I'd hope.
Well, it's like well, it's the mixture of the inbred and also eating other humans.
So I do want to talk about though the connection between these two movies, because I think that we were talking about, which is where we got into koalas, like rural Texas and deindustrialization, and the idea that, you know, this idea of, you know, cattle kind of being brought through the slaughterhouse. The family is really only trained to work in the slaughterhouse, and so that connection all of a sudden, I guess, as a flip switching, assumably, into we're going to eat people from now on. And it's a very Texas nexus, but it's a very Texas flip, because it all of a sudden becomes Leatherface as someone who's, you know, petrified of the fact that people are coming onto his property, which, I mean, isn't something that you necessarily feel from watching the film, but like from doing a bunch of research into the movie, Gunner, who's the guy that plays the original Leatherface, talks about the fact that Leatherface is like afraid of the people coming onto his property, right? Like his reaction to it, and which makes kind of the door the biggest victim of the whole movie, because he's slicing through the door in order to push people out of his house and then killing them, and then, you know. But I mean, you have to ask yourself, I guess, like, how far had they planned this? Maybe they hadn't planned it at all. Like, it's kind of the rattlesnake thing, right? Like the father is the rattle. The father is the rattle, and then I'm reading the messages you guys are sending. That's why I'm laughing. The father is the rattle, and then the rest of it is the rattlesnake. Like you go into the property, and then that's why you're killed. And then Leatherface kind of exits the property, trying to make sure that everybody looking for the rest of the people that have come in that he's killed are taken care of. Like that, taken care of. Yeah. And
go take care of it.
Oh,
hey.
But you know, so I do think that it's important to look at it from that perspective. I mean, it puts it in these set of rules, which then brings us to Blair Witch Project.